Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Istillloveher, the podcast with me, Titi Torrez, and of course, my sisters, KENDRA G and Ivy Rivera. And our special guest today, I'm so excited to have them on the show, Tamika Mallory and Mysonne. Let's give them a round of applause, ladies. So, KENDRA, I'm going to open it up with you. KENDRA was actually outside protesting.
Oh, good.
Outside.
In Chicago. At that first, I can't do nothing without saying thank you to both of you, because we know right now a lot of light is being shown on you guys, but we know whether or not the news is talking about it, you guys are always on the streets. This is my first time talking to both of you, and I'm just humbly grateful that I have you in my African-American family that are fighting this fight when the light is not shined, and when you're doing it for the love and not for the recognition. It doesn't go unnoticed, and it's just really, honestly, an honor. I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful. So I wanted to begin there. Now I just want to say, it's been such an emotional 2 weeks, but we know this isn't the first time we literally even, it's so sad to say, but it's not the first time we've seen a Black man die on camera by a police officer saying he can't breathe. But this time, I really feel like the world shifted. Why do you think this time the world shifted opposed to the last time?
Well, first of all, thank you, ladies. I'm so happy to be with you, and it's so nice to hear that you were out there in those good streets, KENDRA, because, movements are nothing without people. They always say if you call yourself a leader and no one is following you, then you're really not leading anywhere. And although we know that this moment is a leader-full movement, so it's not that any one of us is responsible for how people have recognized and acknowledged the leader in them specifically, I think that people in this particular moment have decided that leadership or not, knowledge or not, strategy or not, they're going. Like, there's no more can we just sit back and deal with, begging and asking and crying and all of that for people to give us justice. Like, it's our justice to take, and I feel people are doing that in this moment. And TT, to you, I just want to say your sisterhood is just so amazing. Your support and
I love you.
Your consistency, because a lot of people, they're cool, but they're not always consistent. And you have been with us before people started paying attention. You were like, no, these are my people, and let me tell the whole world what they've been doing and what they've been working on. And so I'm very appreciative. And our relationship doesn't span that long, and in this little bit of time, we become sisters, and I love that.
Yeah.
So, I think that one, people been pissed off. Like, first of all, we've been pissed off as Black folks, Africans in America for 401 years. So let's just be clear that it don't take much to strike a match for Black people to be like, we ready to shut everything down. But in this particular time period, when we just went through this COVID-19 piece, and we're still, we went through the eye of what they say was the eye of the storm, but we can't be too sure whether or not it will come back and continue to ravage our communities. However, watching the news, whether you believe all the details about COVID or not, whether you agree, support, something happened that really impacted America, and it impacted all of us. Like, everyone felt it. People lost loved ones, people lost jobs. You got 40 million people unemployed. And I think it's a feeling that when you're locked in your homes, you locked up with people you don't really like in the first place. You wasn't trying to be locked up with them people already, and now you stuck in the house with cousins, uncles, aunts, because everybody had to find a place to go inside. And that's hard. You have a lot of families where, since someone works in the daytime and someone works at night and kids are out at school or what have you, they hardly even see each other. And now everyone is sitting with their cell phones in their homes, worried about their future. And now you turn your cell phone on, you go to Instagram, and Ahmaud Arbery is killed right before your eyes. So that's where we start, with a level, I'm sure, of frustration and just anger and pent up tension from people just being like, wow, even in even in a pandemic, we're still dying. So you watch Ahmaud Arbery die, which was horrific to see on film, to see he was hunted, to know that these guys were like slave catchers and what they did to him, terrible. And that's enough. That was enough in itself, at least to rock Georgia. But then the next thing that happens is Breonna Taylor, you know, and I know for us as women and for people who are really, really interested and involved in what's happening in these movements, to see Breonna Taylor killed, and you didn't see a video of it, but you know that she was shot to death in her home for literally no reason at all, it's too much to bear. This is a young woman. You put that on top of Ahmaud Arbery, it's just too much. Now you come to a point where, you know, you watch a man die in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Like we watched the life leave George Floyd's body.
As he calls for his mother.
As he calls for his mother and his family members.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much. And I think that at this point, people locked in their homes, murder happening on TV, you're economically unsure. It just was the straw that broke the camel's back, and people said George Floyd was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I think.
And not to mention, let me just put this in perspective. People in New York, you guys held a march right before the incident with George Floyd in New York, because brown and Black people were already getting beat up in New York in the name of social distancing. In the Bronx and Brooklyn and in these communities that were already being impacted by COVID-19. So we were watching that here in New York play out on social media, on the news, and these police officers weren't being held accountable. So here you have these essential workers who are getting paid shit money, going out every day to provide for their families, getting home in their communities and being harassed and beat up by police officers in the name of social distancing. And we're watching all of this play out. Then we see the Upper East Side people and the people that are chilling on the West getting police officers, they were handing them masks. So we were watching all of this play out in our own backyard on top of this. So, you know, it was spiraling already. So the inevitable was going to happen.
Right. Exactly. So I think what you've seen, like she says, it's the straw that broke the camel back. I call it, you know, the cherry on top of the cake. You know, it's like it's a layered cake. You know, I just think we've seen so much just being in the predicament we were during the pandemic, and just when you just look at the history, you know, we just from when you take it from slavery, that was the first layer of the cake. And then you take it after slavery is the overseer, you know, who after we left slavery. Then the officer was the third layer of the cake. And I think the icing was the Tamir Rices, the Keem Browders,
the list goes on and on.
Eric Garner. It's just so
Garner,
many. And
everything.
I think when we actually watched George Floyd just die as he screamed and he cried, like he literally was like, he was pleading for his life. And you've seen the fact that an officer didn't acknowledge this man as a human being. And I think that was so real because this time it didn't just touch the Black people, and it just touched the brown people. It touched white people who was screaming "All Lives Matter" yesterday. You know, they were screaming "All Lives Matter" yesterday, and they're like, damn, all lives really don't matter. You know, a lot of my Black friends and Black activists are saying that white people are calling them in abundance, saying like, what should we do? You know, they don't even have the bandwidth to sit there and engage most of the white people who didn't understand yesterday. So I think the visual of actually watching that man foam in his mouth, crying for his life, just seeing and humanizing that, because they realized that the police didn't even humanize it. I think that visual, because I've still to this day, I have not watched the whole video. I've stopped it after like 2 minutes because it's too much for me to watch. Mm-hmm. So I know when they watched it, it really just, it was an awakening. you know, and plus dealing with the trauma that we're dealing with, being in our houses all the time, you know, the COVID-19, the fear that the government instilled in us. Not saying that it was definitely a pandemic, it was definitely something for us to be cautious about, something to worry about, but they put a meter of the amount of deaths on the TV screen every day. My 61-year-old mother was calling me crying every day because she was so afraid and scared of what was going on. So when you look at that and you couple it with that, it just was an overload. People were tired of being in the house. And then when we went outside, we made a decision because Tamika was like, look, I'm really not trying to get sick from COVID. Her mother was dealing with health issues. Her mother is elderly. She's like, I can't get this. But we understood the moment. We understood that the governor and the mayor had told us that if we protested against us getting the shit beat out of us in the street, that we would go to jail.
Yeah, I remember that.
So that was a pivotal moment for us as activists, as people who say we love our people, as people who say we stand on the front lines of our people. We had to make a real decision, you know, and we went out there, we got on a call and we sat there and we said, look, we don't know if this is the best, the most, you know, the most, according to the health, is the best thing, but we understand that if we're going to die anyway, if we allow these people to just kill us in the streets right now. And, you know, and we made that call and we went out there and we social distanced during our march. We did the proper things to do, but we was not going to sit in the house while our people were dying in the streets. So, you know, it was a very pivotal moment. And what we all dealing with right now is a real awakening. It's like so many people have never seen this before. Because we always hear about, like even with Trayvon Martin, we heard about what happened. There was no physical video. Like we heard about pieces, but this one we literally watched a police officer sit there with no level of pain, no level of compassion, just watch a man's life leave his body as he sat on his neck for 8+ minutes.
Wow.
And I think that's never happened before in this world.
Yeah.
And as tragic as it was also such a powerful moment for us as a people to come together. You know, a lot of people didn't have, you know, the freedom of time to join these marches the way that we do now. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have the power of choice. I protested 2 days, and just being out there and risking, you know, my health was absolutely worth it to me, because I felt crazy just sitting in my house, just watching this happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's such a time. And this was the biggest civil rights movement of all time. All 50 states went out and marched. Like, that says so much. Like, it's more than just what happened. It's like really us coming to understand. I think that's what it is now. It's not so much about accepting it, it's understanding it. You know, there's a lot of confusion about the all lives matter, the Black lives matter, whatever matters. And it's just like, we have to prioritize things by the way that it's actually shown. The reality is that no other race is getting murdered freely like Black people are. You know what I'm saying? And for you, any person of color, to not understand that it's a matter of joining that type of march and being a part of that voice, being so engulfed in the culture and being a part of, you know, anything Black. Like, I'm Puerto Rican and I'm fighting because I understand. You know what I'm saying? I'm all the way in this culture. So for me to not acknowledge it as my own, I feel like that's the light that a lot of people are starting to see in this time.
Yeah, because there's so many layers to it, right? We talk about the different layers. And Tamika and Mysonne, I want to talk about like different things that people can do. Some protest, some post information online, some donate. Talk about the different layers of activism that people can get involved in.
Yeah. So I would just say that people need to be very, very clear that the streets have to stay hot. You can't go inside and say, okay, we got an arrest for 4 officers and that's the end of it. I'm not saying that people have to be out as we have been, because even I can't sustain that. And these young people, they need us old folks to be out there with them to help make sure we keep them, you know, focused on the goals. Because a lot of times you have people joining these marches that are not really about your cause, and they can cause issues. They can create situations that get our young people hurt, and that get our young people in trouble, and that can ultimately get them killed. And so we do need to have organizers and people who are more seasoned out there with our youth. However, the energy that we see right in this moment has to remain if we're going to see convictions, because just getting someone charged is not a conviction. So you just got them charged. That's not the end of the situation. With the McMichaels, which are the men who killed Ahmaud Arbery, they could go back to their regular lives. If these hearings don't go well, where people continue to put pressure and then ultimately get them, you know, through a trial and make sure that they get convicted, that'll be over with. In the case of Breonna Taylor, no one has been arrested at all. They're on administrative leave, which is the same thing as a vacation, until they figure out, you know, whether or not we need to fire you. Maybe it's a little bit too much heat, or are we going to just let you guys keep your job? So that means our voices have to continue to be heard. And in the George Floyd matter, that's really important, because as we saw with the situation in Boston, where the man was pushed down and he was bleeding out of his ear, and you know, the officers who were involved
in Buffalo,
in Buffalo, they were reprimanded, and officers, they decided to protest what was happening to their against what happened to their colleagues. They stood with their colleagues. They stood with them and said, you know, like, so basically they were against the fact that their colleagues were being challenged for knocking an old man down for no reason. Like, the man wasn't threatening. We watched it on the news. There was no reason for them to abuse him in that way. So that goes to show you that when George Floyd, when a case comes up and these officers have to go to trial, they're going to have the support of the police. And oftentimes we go home. We stop being as involved. We get excited when it's a lot of us marching, and when, you know, we watch it on the news, and we want to be a part of it, and we should. But it's more important actually to stay the long haul. So if you can't march anymore this weekend, if you did a few and you're like, let me get a break, let me reset, that's okay. Because there's going to come a time when we're going to have to hit these streets again to support that family that will be listening to them at trial, talk about who George Floyd was and all the mistakes he ever made in his life, and his mother's mistakes and his kids' mistakes, and everything that they can bring up to discredit him and to put thoughts in the jury's mind as if he was a criminal and he deserved to die. And we know the officers had no idea about any of that when they were killing him. So that's one, keeping the streets hot. But there's some other things that, and I've been saying that while we're marching, we've got to turn some corners and take some other streets. Number one, that census form that people don't seem to think is important is critically important, because as this country is browning and we're becoming a brown America, I think it's so important for people to understand that white folks, like, not all of them, but the ones that are in real serious positions of power, they are losing their minds about this idea that they are becoming a minority, and the brown man and woman is becoming the majority, right? And so what happens though with the census that people don't understand is that based upon the count, when this country tries to count all of its people, they begin to issue resources and divide resources based upon communities. And that's why we see services going to certain communities and not others, because they have majorities. They fill out the census. They participate in some form of group economics. They let their money go around in their communities more than a few hours, the way that Black people do, unfortunately. So the census gives you an opportunity to see who's who and where are these folks, what pockets are they in, and that should mean that the resources begin to shift, that the pendulum swings more in the direction of the brown American, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing, that census form, march down that street. Go ahead.
Can I say something on that? I filled out our census this year, and I've always filled them out. But my husband what is so afraid of the census because he don't want the government in my business. And I think some Black folks are so trained to think that they don't want the white man in their business.
Right.
And we can't trust them. F them. It ain't going to us anyway.
Right.
And I think we have to unlearn some of this behavior that has been trained and put on us because they want us to think that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The census is incredible. It's critically important. The information does not go in a particular database. You know, we know, and I mean, and of all the things that Donald Trump has tried to do, that he's been able to accomplish has been extremely harmful to the American public. The one thing he was not able to win on was trying to put that immigration question on the census form. They would not, his own people refused to allow that to happen. And the reason why is because we understand that the census is supposed to be something that's completely separate and apart and independent of law enforcement. So there's no reason to know whether or not a person is an immigrant or not. We just need to know how many of us are here in this country. So the census form is really important. We have to know who we are, where we are, and how many of us are here. And so if there's 7 people living in your house, I promise you, I'm your girl. Fill out that form and say, this is how many people live in this home and in this building. Because when the public hospital goes up in your area, there are certain things that Black and brown people suffer with, from heart disease to, diabetes to asthma. And so when there's a public hospital in your community, if they don't know that a majority of Black and brown people live in that community, they will not put the types of triage specialists that you need in those public hospitals. I mean, this is really serious, and we can't get into all of that tonight. I know I'm talking too much, but then the other street that I think we've got to march down is voter registration, because of the 100,000 people that just recently died of COVID-19, a large group of them are people who are elderly, and we know disproportionately Black and brown folks died. That is the most dedicated voting base that we have. So we got to make up for those numbers. We got to make up for the people who are elderly, who feel like they don't even want to go vote because they're afraid to go to the polls. A lot of people, as Mysonne says all the time, are scared to even go outside, scared of their own shadow, because of, you don't know with this COVID what could happen. So that's important, because as we go towards the election, which is probably the big lane highway that we all need to be on, like speeding down the highway, which is going to vote, we got to be prepared. And we need to go to the polls armed. And so I think that the best thing we could do, going from marching to actual voting and getting our business in order, is it will make the work that we've done over the last few weeks not be in vain.
So do you think that's the answer to the big question? Because like the big question right now is, I'm gonna make it as plain and simple. Okay, what would make Black people not angry? Like, what do you want? What's the change you're looking for? And we have a mutual friend in Charlemagne who actually put me on to you, Mysonne and Tamika. I just talked to him earlier today, but he's been telling me about you guys for a moment now. And I've been so proud of him because he's been on television making a lot of TV appearances. And one of the things he keeps talking about is the systematic racism that Black people have been dealing with, how we're pretty much set up to fail in these situations. So how do we change the laws that I feel was created many years ago by racist white men? Our country is so different now. Women weren't allowed to be a part of those laws, just white men now. I feel like we need new laws that women, Black women, white women, gay women, Jewish people, Hispanic people, what this country really represents, so people can be treated fair. But how do you get to that position? Like, is the Constitution, could it be ripped up? Like, what's the reality and laws that were created so many years ago and getting them changed now?
I think the reality is, I think we're here. I think we're at a moment where the world has spoken. So you can't govern people that don't want you to govern them. You can't. The government has to represent the people, and the reality is the people are telling you that the laws, the structure that you created no longer represents us. The world is crying out. So that's what's necessary. And if you watch how Minnesota is reacting, you watch how even New York, the governor and the mayor are reacting, they realize that they've lost control. You know, the police department, they no longer represent us. They don't protect and serve us. The people are no longer respecting them. So in order for you to have any level of control, you either have to change that, or you're going to have to try to initiate some level of violence that it looks like the people are ready to return. So we are at a stage right now where it's more of us than them, and they understand that. They issue curfews, and people ain't going home. They said, if you do this, we're going to lock you up. And people said, F that, we just going to get locked up. So the tides are turning. So you don't have a choice. Like, we're not giving you an option. We have made demands. You know, like, there has to be amendments to the Constitution. There has to be law changes. Like, it's real right now. This is the first time in my history of my life that I've seen where we have the ability to make real change. I've been on calls that everybody is in privy to, conversations. I have relationships with different government officials to where they feel that this is the time. We are creating different things that particularly, focus on what our needs are at this time. When you look at Washington and you see where the street that leads to the president's home says Black Lives Matter, things have changed. It's not business as usual. COVID-19 has opened up a can of worms that's not going to be closed.
Well, it can't stay the same. You have to deal with systemic racial injustice. You have to deal with economic oppression. You have to deal with police brutality. You have to deal with judicial and prison reform, which creates everything that you see happening right now and directly affect Black and brown people. Mm-hmm. And these reforms and policies have always been talked about. This is the time that Washington does it. This is the time that we start to look at these politicians, not as politicians, but look at their policies.
Right.
And not allow them to rock us to sleep. So if we treat our votes as independent votes, you don't own our votes because of the color of our skin. We are treating you like an independent. What are you going to give my community? What are the laws you're going to put in place to help my community? And that's what I love about our people that gets on television, especially the ones who are connected like you, like my son, because y'all are on the streets. Y'all know you see what the people are going through.
Yeah,
and that's
Go ahead, my son.
No, that's really what our goal is. We have to create a real agenda. I think what has happened for so many times, we've taken our eyes off the ball. We were happy to get a Black president. We're happy when our vote elects somebody that we like. And we've taken our eyes off the ball. We have not held anybody to accountability for what it is they said they was going to do when they got in office. We look at Mayor de Blasio. We allowed him to flaunt that the fact that his wife was white and his son was white with an afro. Black. I apologize. His wife was Black and his son was Black with an afro, and we were just happy because somebody who seemed to represent us was in office, and we just allowed, and he didn't do most of the things that he said he was going to do. And I think we've learned so much from those two instances. And I think right now, the conversations I'm having with thought leaders, with individuals who have some level of celebrity power, is that you're just not going to get our votes no more. We are coming with an agenda. We need you to make sure that it is just like every other culture and nationality that comes to you, that you make sure, when you sit there with these lobbyists and they lobby you, we're not lobbying you, but we're coming to you with demands. And in order to get our votes, these demands have to be met. So this is the time that they realize we're serious. I think right now, there's no politician in the world that does not realize that Black people are serious.
Yeah. But and the reason why I think Until Freedom, our organization, is so special is that it provides an entry point for people coming from every different perspective. So my son and I have two different perspectives. In his mind, or in his world, and it is his truth, and it's the truth of many people, most people, is that de Blasio, they saw him on TV and he had a Black wife, and a Black son, and he said the right things about Dante, his son. And so people said, you know what, I think this white man is one of us. He gets it, he understands, because we oftentimes like to, you know, feel like we want to know, we want to love everybody, like especially us as people of color. We're not hateful. We want everybody to be our friends. So when we see someone that we think actually understands us and gets the issues, we want them, we like, okay, you can come, you can sit at the table with us, right? But in my situation, it wasn't that he had a Black wife and a Black son. It was that he was literally marching with us in the streets. He was out there, you know, he was, and I've been doing this for a real long time. So de Blasio was walking next to us. He was in the fight. He was in the struggle, and he was promising a lot of things. And as my son said, a lot of things he said he was going to do, it didn't happen. And the main thing, I think, I mean, of course he's done things. Of course, every mayor, there's no mayor, no president, no government official that, well, there are some, but most of them do something, right? So it's not to say he did nothing. He definitely maintained and even increased the budget for the crisis management system, which is Erica Ford and A.T. Mitchell and Shanduke McFadden and all those who do gun violence prevention work across the city, employing young people, formerly incarcerated folks. So he did that, and that's great. The problem that de Blasio has had, and it seems like some corner is being turned over the last 3 or 4 days, and literally 3 or 4 days, is that he's afraid of the police department. And that's a problem, because we met you on the streets for stop and frisk. That's where I remember him originally, as being out there saying we couldn't have stop and frisk. And that was because Bloomberg was the mayor and he was public advocate, de Blasio, at the time. But then when he became mayor and he stood up to the police in the very beginning, if you all remember, the cops turned their backs on him at a funeral, and he changed his entire tune and decided that he had to placate to the police for—
he was scared, and NYPD is known to bully people
everybody
that are in office and everybody. That's why they put his daughter's picture out there when she got arrested for protesting. They're
That's
known
right.
for that. So what happens is they start to fold and crumble
Right.
under that.
And I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, I think what we have to do is understand that, because that type of and my son said, like the nationalities and different people, they come together and they really demand things for their communities. The police department's color is blue, and they demand things for their community. Black folks, one of the issues that I think we have, Black and brown people, is that we have a disconnect between us and the elected officials that are between us and the mayors, us and the governor, us and the president. So those people that are supposed to be protecting us, those people who we've considered to be leaders in all different walks of life, they're actually comfortable with the status quo as it is. They're comfortable with it. So they're meeting with the governor. The governor's doing crazy stuff. And now all of a sudden the governor's the next president of the United States, because he does some good press conferences about COVID-19. And the whole country is like, oh, we love Cuomo. Meanwhile, in the middle of a pandemic, he's cutting healthcare. In the middle of a pandemic, he is increasing people's chances of having to go to prison by canceling bail reform. I mean, like, so much happened. And I think, to go back to what you were saying, Kendra, about, you know, how do we get people in this moment? Like, how do we get laws changed? I don't even think people know who all the folks are that help to get these laws passed. So we have to educate people, and Revolt and Hot 97,
GCI in Chicago, podcast.
Everybody has to get, and trust me, until freedom is going to give it to us, really, like in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be going around with a paper, passing it out to hosts on radio shows, people on TV, people on Love and Hip Hop, some things like, this is what you need to be talking about. This is what you need to be posting. This is what you need to be saying, because we need to educate our people on what is happening around them. We spend too much time focused on crap that doesn't matter. And then we want to get mad when we find out that in Breonna Taylor's house, Kenny Walker is her boyfriend. He fired one warning shot and ended up spending time in jail. And if it had not been for people putting boots on the ground, Kenny probably would still be in jail. Because remember, Breonna Taylor was killed on March 13th. And we're just hearing about this in late May. Okay, so and I was going to say, the reason why that's important from a policy perspective is because the state of Kentucky allows you to fire a warning shot, but then they have no knock warrants. So they can go into your home without announcing themselves and then lock you up for firing the warning shot, the warning shot that the law allows. So what that means is that law is to protect a certain group of people, and we have to know that, and then make sure our elected officials do what they have to do to stop it. So now there's a Breonna Taylor law. And so on Thursday, people are going to be voting, and folks are calling to tell the council members that they have to ban no-knock warrants. And that's great. That sounds one. It made it out of committee. But why somebody got to die first for us to be educated about what we should be advocating for?
Can I ask you to just explain because the narrative of defund the police is starting to shift. You see white people starting to say, oh, I want to be able to call the police when someone breaks into my house. Can you just explain for those who don't understand what the defund the police movement really is?
So I'm learning myself more about all the layers of it, but here's the top line things that I know. We live in a capitalist society. America functions on capitalism. Everything is about money. That means that's the only thing they understand is you either impact their money or you impact votes. The only two things that matter. So when you're in a society that, I'll give you an example in New York, at one point, that's why I said it seemed like the last couple of days, de Blasio, something happened, and he's like, he's standing up to the police department. Thank you, Jesus. Maybe George Floyd was the straw that broke the camel in his, in his world too. It could, for anybody that has good, a good heart. And so before this, though, just a few weeks ago, they announced that they were going to cut the summer youth program in New York City, which means kids won't have jobs. But they were going to maintain the police budget. And in some cases, some instances, there were things that were going to be increased. That is asinine. We already know that public safety is not just about police. It's also about ensuring that our young people have opportunities, that they have jobs, that they stay safe, that they stay engaged, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if because of budget, because what they will make you think is that the reason why they were cutting summer youth was because of COVID, but it was not, because just like people went to work from home, give these kids something to do to work from home. We can figure out jobs and things that they can do to socially distance, right? And so they would make you think it was COVID-19, but that's not what it was. They said it's the budget, that there wasn't enough money. So if the summer youth program has to be canceled, then the police budget should also be cut. That would make much sense to me, at least to be able to give some kids jobs to keep half the program, or if you're going to cut, you cut everyone across the board. But they were not planning to cut police. So now what they're doing is saying, okay, we're going to balance it out, which is all we asked for, is balance it out. Take some money from the police department, give it to things for youth to do this summer, fund some of the summer programs for young people, and keep things balanced again in that way. So that's one way to look at, and when de Blasio was asked about it on the news today, they said, well, you're shifting money. He said, no, I'm defunding the police. That doesn't mean he's taking every dime out of the police department where you're not going to be able to call 911. It just means that the police, first of all, police are funded for things, TT, like militarized stuff. They got all of these damn shields and things like that they've been using on protesters, by the way. They don't need a budget that helps them be more militarized on New York City streets. And right now, they've got budgets like terrorists. You've got little towns in like the South and in the West that have tanks, basically. I mean, that's probably too much, but you understand my point. They've got massive equipment in these little police departments that they don't need. And meanwhile, it's homeless people everywhere. So that's one concept to think about. The other piece, as I was saying, in a capitalist society, when you're dealing with a situation where a particular institution is dominant, what you have to do is, in order to make them understand, because they don't seem to be getting it from new training, from another meeting, from programs where the police work with kids and cops. That doesn't seem to be helping. So sometimes you got to pull people's money so that they can say, oh, shoot, like, we got to get it together. Because that's like, if you lose your job, if you work in a job and you constantly making mistakes, at some point somebody's going to fire you, and then you will understand when you go to get another job that you have to behave in a different type of way. So I think it's all about balance. It's not about completely defunding police. It's about reducing the amount of we focus too much on policing as a model for keeping our streets safe, and not enough on what to do for communities so that they can govern themselves.
I want to jump in with a question about Black people and white people. Last Tuesday, was the Blackout Tuesday on social media, and it was so much, I felt like we couldn't come together. I'm not going to not post today. I want to say what I want to say, or I don't want to do this. Y'all looting. It was like, for one day, can we figure it out and come together? But that was just a day that I could use. But it's been so many things that I think that sometimes Black people, we don't know how to work together. So sometimes we hold ourselves back in getting organized. What is a way that we can get us all on the same page? Because I believe no matter how passionate a Black person is with a different way to do it, I think we all have the same goal as mine, and we're tired not being treated equal in this country. So how do we just come together in a unique way and stop arguing about how one person's doing it versus the next person?
I think that's another one of the goals of Until Freedom. Is not about uniformity, it's about unity. Everybody doesn't have to do the exact same thing, but we just have to be unified. And I think our message has to be unified. I think we have to identify what is the message we want to put forward. What is that we're trying to say? Like, you brought up the example of, the blackout. And I was one of the people that was confused, because the message I was getting, I had conversation with people who wanted to do interviews with me and different that. And it was like, oh, nah, we can't do it on Tuesday because it's blackout. I want to respect the blackout. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't understand. There was mad people like, oh, blackout. And I seen the black screen. So I was confused, and I'm like the message, the words that I'm giving, I'm out here on the front line. Like, we in the middle of a pandemic. We in the middle of riots where Black people are dying, being killed, being tear gassed, being shot in the face with rubber bullets. Like, this is really happening. So I can't afford to not be at social media. I'm getting the word out. I'm making sure that our lives are protected. I'm making sure that the real reality of the news that's going on the front lines is being given. So I can't really afford not to black out. So then she's like, no, it's not about that. It's about this. It's about making sure that people who aren't really posting about that are taking a step back from that. And, people like you who are posting should be posting those things. But that wasn't relayed properly. And I think what has to happen is that there has to be some level of unity. You know what I'm saying? Not uniformity. There has to be a level of unity where it's people that we go to, that we deliver a message to. And that's what Until Freedom wants to be. We want to be people that you go to, that you can respect, that you say, okay, let's find out what this is from them. That you contact us, say, hey, this is a message that we want to give to our people to make sure that we on code with this.
Yeah. And so we're just a platform to deliver it out to.
That's it. And we want to be the platform. We want to be the platform. So if we have a message that coincides with the freedom and justice of Black people, and making sure that we on the same code, we want you to give us that message, and we look at it and say, okay, how does this make sense? That we deliver it to our people till we on code. And it's called, and we called it yesterday, was the Freedom Call. That this is something that we want to be able to give out to all our influencers, all our like UTT, all of the people who have platforms. When we pull out a Freedom Call, this is the message that all our people know. This is the code we need to be on. Everybody that's on the same wavelength that we on, that want the same thing, when we put out a Freedom Call, that's what it should be. So I think that's what it has to be. I think the messaging, because there's so many people that want to do the right thing. And I think people don't do the wrong thing purposely. I think people are trying to find the right thing to do. They're saying the right thing, like even in protests, there's a messaging about peaceful. That's not something that we adhere to. Peaceful protest for us means to be sedated, to be, you have some type of I forgot the word that I used yesterday, but it's not a protest. You know, it's some type of where you just walking around, you're having a good time. It's not a good time. We say no justice, no peace, and we haven't got justice. It's a parade. That's what I call it. It's a parade. You know, they want you to have a parade. They want everybody to be smiling, and the police are sitting there smiling. Y'all go home. Nobody. No, we don't want violent protests, but we're not here to be peaceful. So if we say no justice, no peace, and we ain't get no justice, then how the hell y'all gonna get peace? So there's messaging around it that has to let you know that we're serious. It can't be, you know, business as usual. People are in these streets for 12 days now. So every protest has to be serious. People have to understand that we're not gonna go home until the changes are made that we're looking to be made. So for you to answer your question, we have to find some people that we trust. You know, like as far as Until Freedom, like all the work that we do, people, you know, most organizations, because you donate to us, I don't like that language. I don't want you to donate anything to us, because to me, that's some level of charity and you're doing something out of kindness to your heart. We want you to invest in Until Freedom. We want you to invest in your own freedom. We want you to invest in us because you believe that we are going to do everything possible to get the things that you feel are necessary. You know, so that's our goal. Our goal is to be that for people. Like we've been on the front line before it was trendy, before it was cool, before it was a pandemic, before it was people were rioting. This is what our life work is. This is our God-given mission. So and we are so sure about that I'm willing to lose my life for the freedom and the liberation of my people. And that's how we live our life. So when we come to you, and you know that, so I'm telling you this, but I know that you have followers that are paying attention. But we want, even if it's not us, invest in somebody that you believe is going to get you where you're trying to go. You know, invest, follow those people, listen, have voices. We had King, we had Malcolm X that people really believed in. They followed them, they invested in them, because when they said something, they know that even if they were wrong, they were authentic. You know, and that's what we want to create. We want to create authentic messaging, authentic leadership, and authentic, attainable, actionable items that are going to get us where we want to go.
I mean, I agree with everything that Mysonne is saying. And, you know, I feel like it's not like we're talking about creating a message that everybody has to adhere to, because that scares people. Like, oh, so you guys think y'all are going to be the new Dr. Kings? That's not the goal. It's really about us coming together, whether we like each other or not, whether we agree on everything or not, and just being like, yo, what's the messaging? Like, what is it that we're on? Okay, you know, so-and-so, I don't know, whoever, you name the person, you've got Charlemagne, you've got a voting campaign. Great. I don't have to do the work to put it together. This is awesome. What does it look like? What do we need to know? How do we need to get people motivated and mobilized behind it? And it's a lot of humility that goes into being able to support other people and not have to be the face of, the center of. You know, a lot of people look at me and they're like, wow, you know, Tamika, you know, people always say like, wow, people love you and this and that. Yeah, that's true. But a lot of it, I know, because I hear it and I also work at it every single day. It comes from a sense of humbleness that I ask God for all the time. That doesn't make me feel like I have the answers. You know, I'm the best. I'm the smartest, because there's a bunch of girls out here that they are smart. They can talk. They know the big words. They got the whole thing. And I look at them and I'm in awe. But one thing I know I have is the ability to move people on the street. So if you are somebody who is super intellectual, who knows how to put the programs together, then let's figure out how we get together. You put the program together. I'm going to go to the street and take it to Ray Ray. My son can take it even deeper than Ray Ray. He go talk to, you know, people that don't even come outside. You know what I'm saying? People you don't even see in the daytime. And that's just where we are. That's how we're going to get where it is we're going, is that we just like we came together for these protests and people, we're going to have to come together to do the real work. We are in a powerful moment when people are waking up. And I think we just have to be prepared as a people. Like if they're waking up, we also have some waking up to do ourselves. So we need to be waking up as well, because we got a lot of our people I mean, look at what Trina just said. And I didn't even know. Like, people started calling me like, you need to talk to Trina. I'm like, why am I mean, I'll talk to any Black woman, but I didn't even know.
Basically, she does radio in Miami on the morning show, and they were having the conversation about the curfew being lifted, and her suggestion was the curfew should start at 6 p.m. because the animals, they're acting like animals, just getting out of a zoo, looting up the downtown city. Now, Trick Daddy was trying to stop her, but she was very passionate about her statement. One of her friends' shops got looted, and Trick Daddy brought that up. And then she also brought the conversation of Black people killing Black people because her brother was also murdered by a Black man. So I want to say this in Trina's defense. I didn't agree with any of it. Her delivery wasn't right, but I feel like Trina is just dealing with a lot overall. Like the last 3 months I've been as a radio personality in Chicago, she's been in my entertainment report from Love and Hip Hop, arguing with those people. Then she's been arguing with Kaya. Then this. I feel like she is a person that needs to take a step back, needs a vacation, and just needs to reset. Because I feel like what happened on the radio, it was like 3 months of madness. And I don't want to give up on Trina. I don't agree with her.
And I don't.
But I also think too, when you are a radio personality, sometimes coming from a rapper to a radio personality, and you have to express yourself in a way that is different from being a rapper, that comes with a level of intellect and maturity that you don't necessarily know how to process. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly. There has to be education in this field. Because I had this conversation with people all the time. Like, I've had a conversation with somebody, I'm not even bringing their name up, but we had like a debate on a Zoom call about this very subject. And it's just like, if you're not educated, you do so much harm to your people because they use you as a talking point against our own struggle. And we don't even realize that. You just be mad and you angry. You say, oh, this is going on and we need to do this. And you don't realize that you have such a platform, you have such a voice, that your enemy will utilize your voice to validate killing us. And we don't, and they don't think that. They just think that they're saying some things and it's just on the radio. And when you on that radio, you have to be accountable. You have to understand what you're saying. You have to do research. You have to look up what you're saying. You have to understand the dynamics of what you're saying. You have to understand the effects of what you're saying. And I think a lot of us don't. You know, my friend Shaka Senghor hit me and Tamika in the text message. It was like, yo, we need to open up something to where we create messaging for our artists and our celebrities, because they mean well, but the words that they're saying is so much more harmful than good for us. And that's what's happening. People mean well. They think, oh, we need to say this and that. And I don't think Trina's a bad person. I just think that she's not educated. If she had a conversation with Tamika, if we had sat down and we broke down the reality of this whole black on black crime thing that she's talking about, or the whole looting situation, and how when you utilize the word animals to your people, how you validate the killing of them by these officers and by these white supremacists. You know, when if we sat her down and had those conversations with her, I'm 100% sure that she would be a lot more conscious of what she says.
And you see, I think that's the issue. For me, I'm not sure that it is. I think, yes, you have to be accountable. Yes, you definitely have to do research. We talk about that all the time. Before we speak, we need to make sure we read up on, talk to other folks that are experts on issues, and not just have an opinion or go find the source on the internet and say, oh, I believe that this is the case. I was so frustrated with people during COVID because people were like finding nameless, faceless people who had a nice title on social media. And they're like, oh, those people said this thing is not real, or it's whatever, even, whatever their opinion is. And I'm like, okay, but what about the people who are family members and friends of ours who are actually doctors, elected officials, and otherwise? And we're willing to take the advice or the word of somebody that we saw on the internet over people who are working next to us every day, and they're actually essential workers dealing with the issue of COVID and other challenges that our people face. So I think yes, it's research, but it's also who are you listening to? Because She could be having conversations with people. You and I could be having, all of us could have people talking to us. But just because they're talking to us doesn't mean that they're telling us the right thing. So we have to figure out who we're surrounded by. Are we surrounded by historians that can actually help us to understand the context for looting, the context for violence, the context for militarized government that decides to put a curfew on people rather than just giving you the justice that you deserve for the violence that they perpetuated against your people in the first place? Like George Floyd, him being murdered was the reason why people decided to loot. They and not everybody. Some people, we don't even know who those folks were, what type of actors they were that were out there. Like I said, as detractors in the movement, they're looting, they're vandalizing, they're doing all of that just to kind of keep things fuzzy, to get people distracted. But let's just say there were people for sure who were just angry as hell, and they were like, hey, let's just break this glass, burn this car, do whatever. That was not happening before George Floyd was killed. So the way to stop it is to deal with the accountability piece. And I think not everyone has that understanding. Not everyone has those talking points. And I blame, in a lot of instances, record labels and managers and publicists and all of that for trying to keep artists and entertainers away from history, away from information, away from people who they consider to be Black radicals or Chicana radicals, or, you know, they don't want you feminist or whatever. They don't want you to deal with that because it's too dangerous. So they'd rather put you in a situation where you're in a cocoon and then you don't get the information that you need. So now when you're no longer in a cocoon and you're trying to figure out what's happening in your next life, and you get a radio job or a TV job and you're on your own and the whole team is now gone because you don't have a hit record anymore. Now you got to speak. And then what is going to come out your mouth? Because you haven't been properly educated. So I just would say that I tell artists all the time, I have sent DMs to artists that they were my friend until I DM'd them and told them, I see what they're doing to you and you need to be careful.
Whew, girl, this was everything. This was everything. Kendra, Ivy, anything else you want to ask before we let Tamika and Mysonne go? Because Tamika could celebrate the last hour and a half of her birthday. Anything else, ladies?
Oh, I know.
I want you to tell people, because I'm gonna donate again, but I know you don't like the word donate. Invest until.
There you go. Woo,
Invest.
Yes.
I saw you guys on a live with Neo and Tigger, and I invested that night, and I want to make sure you're watching us this night. They invested again. So tell them how they can invest until.
So first of all, you can go to www. I guess that makes me old because now people don't say www anymore. They just say untilfreedom.com. So you can go to untilfreedom.com, click donate, and it gives you all the ways that you can,
We're about
invest.
to change that. It's going to change it
It's
to
going to say invest. That's right. We're going to change it to invest. But I don't know if we could just put invest, because I don't know if we could just put
we got to
invest
create
because,
our own button. Look, we got to create new language.
well,
If
all
we're
I'm
trying to do
saying
something
is,
new, we got to create new language.
I understand that, but what I don't want is for people to be like, I don't want to make an investment, and they click off of it and say, I couldn't find the donate button.
I don't want people to say they don't want to donate.
Yeah, it's gonna say,
You have to like put a custom definition, so they're not confused.
A little definition, exactly.
Right,
No,
on the top, right?
So you can go there, you click the donate button, and there is all the Cash App, Venmo, and Act Blue. Some people don't like apps to give their money, so Act Blue is an actual website. You go, you put the information in, and you can donate to us. People PayPal us, people Zelle us, all the information is there. So and our Cash App and Venmo is just Until Freedom.
Yes, and that, I know you've heard it a couple of times, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again. The speech you gave when you were in Minneapolis was like, it gave him, like, literally, I have friends, I was so, like, literally exhausted, like physically exhausted. after what happened with George Floyd. And I host a morning show in Chicago, and I had to tell coworkers who weren't getting it and my friends who weren't getting it. And I used your video as an example for a lot of people to understand. So I want you to know, I think you may know, but it was so powerful. And I'm just so happy that God is using you as a vessel in this moment. And both of you, my son, like, y'all deserve all the blessings that God has to offer. Your hard work does not go unnoticed. And I'm just so grateful, like, sincerely. Really.
Can I say something? Because she's very modest. Tamika is probably one of the greatest orators of this generation. Like, that speech, although we love it, is probably one of the most simplest speeches that she's ever given. I've been, like, we've been on tour, we've gone to colleges, and I've listened to her speak. And probably a speech she made yesterday was probably, the day before yesterday was probably better than that speech. But that's not, people don't know that. So at the end of the day, but I'm just trying to tell you, this woman is born to lead. She's born to speak. She's born to motivate. And I'm glad that the world is getting it. TT, you've known for a lot longer than these people have known. And me and you, I've known longer than you. I've known longer than you have. But I'm just glad that she's actually getting the recognition, and I'm blessed to be able to do what my heart is passionate about and be recognized for it, to be able to change things for my people, to be able to watch, actually watch the things that we set out to do, days that we set out. And, she's been through so much, man. Like, Tamika has been through so much, and she's been a trooper. She's been alienated. She's been exalted, and then they tried to bury her, but they didn't know she was a seed, and then she grew into a garden, So watching
that's a true leader.
We love to hear it.
That's a true leader.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate that, Mice. You're my brother, and I love you dearly. And thank you so much. I feel like I've said so much of what was in that speech before, but in that particular moment, Black America needed somebody to channel the feeling, the rage. And we shouldn't be uncomfortable saying that we felt rage in our hearts and in our minds and our souls. And I'm, as you said, just grateful to God, and I'm humbled by the fact that I will be the one to just be standing in the right space at the right time to say the right words. And so that's it. It wasn't me. That was nothing but God.
God's work, baby. We are here.
Ivy?
I mean, you guys really hit it on the head. This whole conversation was just so enlightening. And for me, I'm gonna be a first-time voter this year. For a while, I just thought that voting for people like us was like a marketing ploy. I didn't think our vote count. I just thought it was a big, smoke and mirrors type thing. But I also learned how important it is to move as a unit. And, I definitely want to take the actions. Tamika, you see, I'm doing my due diligence. You on it. I'm definitely trying to be more responsible with, my platform. And it's good to have people like you guys who look like us, who speak like us, to educate us, so continue to do what you do, because we're going to definitely lean on you guys for the tools and the resources and the information that we wouldn't really understand or look for in other people.
Yeah.
Thank you
and it
so
takes
much.
true passion. It takes true passion. And that's one thing that you guys have, is a true passion to go day in and day out and day in and day out to do this. We've been exhausted for 2 weeks, and y'all been on the front line longer than us.
Saying.
So
it's
we appreciate
We're
y'all.
tired too. We're tired too. We can't even remember words. So we're tired too. I was saying, we just are getting an opportunity to eat like real food in the last 2 days, because on the road there was no food. Everything was either boarded up because of the protests, or the COVID-19 situation had things closed. So you have businesses closed from COVID and boarded because of protests all at the same time. We had Subway sandwiches. One day they got me some chicken gizzards from like a gas station somewhere. Like it really was bad. It was bad.
Just give me some water, man.
Wow.
I like gizzards though.
Happy birthday, Tamika, and we love you guys.
Birthday.
Thank you so much. This was much needed. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Love,
Thank you.
guys.